I don't know what I was expecting that night. Probably nothing, if I'm being honest. But nothing had prepared me for what I saw. The moment my eyes locked onto that scene, I felt everything I thought I knew about my life slip away. It wasn't a slow burn. It wasn't some drawn-out process. It was like a light switch flipping off, leaving me in total darkness. It started as any other evening. Chloe, my wife, had been gone most of the day. We don't usually check in on each other during work hours, but something had been nagging at me all week. I couldn't put my finger on it, little things that didn't add up. Maybe it was the way she would answer my texts with one-word replies, or the way she always seemed distracted. Maybe it was the subtle glances she would give her phone, like she was expecting a message from someone she didn't want me to see. Maybe it was the strange feeling I couldn't shake, even when everything appeared fine on the surface. That evening, she told me she was going to dinner with some coworkers. No big deal. We'd both been busy, and she deserved a night out. But still, that feeling lingered. It was like a storm cloud hanging over my thoughts, always just out of sight, but never quite gone. I was sitting in the living room, flipping through TV channels when I noticed something strange. Chloe's purse was sitting on the kitchen counter, her phone inside it, still buzzing with notifications. Now, I wasn't the type to snoop. But, well, curiosity has a way of twisting your morals when you're already on edge. I tried to fight the impulse. I really did. But something inside me snapped. I picked up her phone, just to check the time, nothing more. And that's when I saw it. The notification. From someone named Ben. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you." I couldn't breathe. My mind was racing, trying to process the words, trying to piece together what was happening. Ben? Who was Ben? The name meant nothing to me. But that message? It was clear as day, and everything inside me screamed that I had to find out more. I had to know what was really going on. I set the phone down. I couldn't take it. The thought of what I had just seen kept replaying in my head, over and over. I had to do something. I had to confront her. But I knew it couldn't wait until she came home. I needed answers, now? Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and left the house. It was a cold night, the streets lit only by the occasional street lamp. I didn't have a plan, but I knew where I had to go. I drove to the restaurant she'd mentioned earlier. She hadn't mentioned where exactly, but she had mentioned being in town. I figured if I didn't find her there, I'd just keep looking. Maybe it was a long shot, but I needed to do something. When I pulled into the parking lot, I didn't see her car, but I saw something else. A dark sedan parked near the entrance. It wasn't her usual car. I told myself it was just a coincidence. But that feeling, the one that had been gnawing at me all week, it flared up, stronger than ever. I parked a few spots away from the sedan, watching the entrance. I stayed there for what felt like hours, just waiting. But eventually, I saw her. Chloe. She walked out of the restaurant, her heels clicking against the pavement. But she wasn't alone. There he was. Ben. They were laughing, leaning in close to each other. I could see them clearly through the window. The way he touched her arm as they walked, the way she smiled at him. That smile, the one I used to be the recipient of, the one I thought was just for me. I watched them for a moment, frozen, unable to move. I couldn't believe it. Every bit of trust one had built, every moment we shared, was crashing down in front of me. They got into his car, and for a split second, I thought about just turning around and going home. Maybe this wasn't the right time to confront her. Maybe I should give her a chance to explain. But that was the moment I decided I couldn't just walk away. Not again. Not after everything that had led me to this point. I had to follow them. I kept my distance, trailing behind them as they drove to another location. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. They stopped at a small, unassuming apartment building. I watched as they got out of the car and walked into the building together. My heart was pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to throw everything away and storm over there, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Not yet. I stayed there, parked across the street, watching. It was a surreal experience. I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd have to question the woman I loved, the one I thought I knew better than anyone else in this world. But here I was, a stranger in my own life. I stayed there for what felt like hours, but I knew I couldn't stay much longer. Something inside me had broken. The trust that had held me together for so long had shattered, and I couldn't pick up the pieces. By the time I left, the night had turned cold, and the weight of everything that had just unfolded pressed down on me. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. I wasn't sure what my life would look like now. But I knew one thing for certain. Everything had changed. And I wasn't going to let this go. I couldn't sleep that night. My body was physically exhausted, but my mind was wide awake, trapped in a loop of thoughts I couldn't control. What had I just witnessed? The reality of it didn't sink in until hours later, when I finally made it back home. The silence in the house felt suffocating. Chloe hadn't come back yet, and I didn't know whether to feel relieved or angrier. It's strange, the things you can't unsee. The way Ben touched her arm, the way she leaned into him, the way everything felt so natural, as if this wasn't the first time. I'd never seen that side of her before, the one that didn't belong to me. My stomach churned every time I thought about it. What was going on? How long had it been happening? I thought about waiting for her to come home, confronting her right away. But something told me to hold off. I needed to think this through. I needed to plan my next move carefully. After all, this wasn't just some argument or misunderstanding. This was betrayal. Around midnight, Chloe finally came through the front door, looking exhausted but trying to act casual. She froze the second she saw me sitting on the couch, my arms crossed, my eyes fixed on her. "Artie? What's going on?" Her voice wavered. She must have known something was off. I couldn't look at her. I didn't want to look at her. I didn't want to see the woman who had just shattered everything I thought I knew. So instead, I stared at the floor, forcing myself to breathe steadily. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, but it felt like the words were being ripped out of me. "You said you were having dinner with coworkers. But I followed you, Chloe. I saw you with him." The words hung between us like a heavy fog, and I could hear her breath catch. She didn't move, didn't speak at first. I could see the guilt in her eyes. It was all too clear. I wasn't doing anything wrong, Artie," she stammered, but I could already tell she was lying. "It was just a work dinner. Ben's a colleague. You know that." "Ben," I repeated the name slowly, almost tasting it. "Who is he, Chloe? Really?" She shook her head quickly, looking panicked. "It's nothing, I swear. Just business. You're overreacting." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the quiet room. "Overreacting? Really? You didn't even try to hide it. You walked out of that restaurant with him, Chloe. You got into his car like it was the most natural thing in the world. Don't tell me I'm overreacting." She closed her eyes, swallowing hard as if she were trying to control her emotions. But I could see the cracks forming in her perfect facade. This isn't what you think. It's just complicated." "Complicated?" I couldn't help but interrupt her, my voice rising. "Complicated? How many times have I asked you what's been going on, Chloe? How many times have I tried to reach out to you, and you just shut me out? How many times have I caught you looking at your phone and acting like you had a secret?" She flinched, and I could see the tears starting to well up in her eyes. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not right then. Not when everything I had trusted had been thrown away so casually. "Why, Chloe? Why him? What do you get from him that you don't get from me?" I asked, my voice quiet now, but full of pain. Was I not enough? Was I too much? Did you not love me anymore? She looked at me, tears running down her cheeks. I could see how sorry she was, but her apology felt empty. "I do love you, Artie. I've always loved you. But somewhere along the way, I got lost. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to fix things." I shook my head, the words stinging. "You didn't know how to fix things? Is that why you're running off with him? Fixing things by pretending I don't exist?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me, but I couldn't stop it now. It was all out in the open. She collapsed onto the couch beside me, her hands shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but it was too late for apologies. The damage was already done. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind a blur. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. I didn't want to hear her try to explain away something so obvious, so real. I felt betrayed, humiliated, but most of all, lost. How could I not have seen this coming? How could I have been so blind? "Tell me one thing, Chloe," I said, my voice now steady. "How long has this been going on? Don't lie to me. I need to know the truth." She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. And that was all the answer I needed. I can't," she whispered. That's when I knew. It had been going on longer than I could even imagine. Maybe it was just a fling, or maybe it had been more. But one thing was clear. I had been living in a lie I had built with her, and now it was all falling apart. I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to scream, to burn the whole damn house down, but I couldn't. I needed a plan. I needed to think. I couldn't just let her destroy everything. Instead, I stood there for a moment, looking at the woman I thought I knew, the woman who had just torn my life apart. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. "You can go," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "I need some time to think. We're not going to fix this tonight." She didn't protest. She simply stood, wiped her tears away, and walked out of the room. As the door closed behind her, I sat down again, the weight of everything pressing on my chest. And that's when I realized it was over. I didn't know how or when, but everything had changed. Nothing would ever be the same, and I had to figure out what to do next. The silence after Chloe left was suffocating. I hadn't realized how much noise there was in my life until it was gone. There was no talking, no laughter, no casual banter, nothing. Just the stillness of the house and the echoes of everything I thought I knew about my marriage crashing down around me. I sat there in the dim light, the weight of the situation crushing my chest. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, louder than it had ever been. Every second felt like an eternity. I could still feel the anger bubbling under my skin, but at the same time, something else was growing, an emptiness. A hollow feeling that had taken root the moment I realized what Chloe had done. How could she? How could she betray me like this? I thought about the life we had built, the late-night talks, the dreams we shared about the future, the plans for a family. All of it felt so distant now, like a dream I couldn't remember. The woman I thought I married, the one I trusted above all others, had done something unforgivable. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, lost in my thoughts, but eventually, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't pretend like everything was going to be okay, like we could work through it. I wasn't sure what the future would hold, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep living this lie. I had to confront her again, but this time, it wasn't going to be about hearing her excuses or feeling sorry for her. This time, it was about taking control of my own life. The decision wasn't easy. I had spent years building this life, believing in our future together. But what I had seen, what I had discovered, had irrevocably changed everything. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't pretend that everything would be fine. Chloe came back in the morning, her eyes red from crying. I could see the guilt in her expression, the remorse, but I couldn't feel sorry for her anymore. The truth was, I had been suffocating under her lies for too long. I had given everything to this marriage, and she had given a part of herself to someone else. She stood in front of me, hesitating before speaking. "Artie, please, just let me explain," she said, her voice shaky. But I was done listening to her explanations. I had listened to enough of them over the past few days, and each one had only made me feel smaller, more insignificant. So, I cut her off before she could say another word. "No," I said, my voice firm, surprisingly calm considering the turmoil inside me. "There's nothing to explain. You've made your choice, Chloe, and I've made mine." Her face fell. The tears started to fall again, but I wasn't moved. "Not this time. Not anymore. I never wanted to hurt you, Artie. I swear I didn't," she pleaded, reaching out for my hand. But I pulled away. "You already have," I said quietly. "You hurt me in a way I didn't even know was possible. You took something from me that I'll never get back." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. I could see her searching my face, probably looking for some sign that I still cared, that I would forgive her. But I couldn't give her that. Not anymore. "I'm leaving," I said, the words feeling final as they left my mouth. "This isn't just something we can fix. I'm done." Chloe collapsed onto the couch, her hands covering her face as she cried. But it didn't move me. The anger I had been holding onto for days was slowly starting to fade, replaced by something else. A strange sense of clarity. I had been living in a fog for so long, letting Chloe's lies cloud my vision. But now I could see everything so clearly. I grabbed my jacket and walked toward the door. I could hear her begging me to stay, but I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. I couldn't. As I stepped out into the cool morning air, I realized that I wasn't just walking away from Chloe. I was walking away from the person I had become. The version of me who had been too blind to see what was happening right in front of him. I didn't recognize that person anymore. But I knew one thing. He didn't belong in this world. I needed space. I needed time to think, to figure out who I really was without her. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to wrap my mind around what had just happened. I'd never felt more alone in my life. My phone was flooded with texts from Chloe, but I ignored every single one. I couldn't handle hearing her apologies, her promises to change. The truth was, I didn't care about her excuses anymore. I had to make a decision. And it wasn't just about Chloe. It was about me. It was about reclaiming control of my own life. I couldn't keep living in her shadow, pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I had given her everything, and in return, she had taken my trust. I had to take that back. I took a walk through the city, the cold air biting at my skin, and for the first time in days, I felt something other than anger. I felt free. It wasn't the freedom I had wanted, but it was a kind of freedom I hadn't known I needed. The weight that had been pressing on me was starting to lift. And that's when I realized, no matter how much I loved her, no matter how much I wanted to fix it, I couldn't. She had already made her choice. And now, it was my turn to make mine. I couldn't save her, but I could save myself. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the path to doing just that. The days that followed were a blur. Chloe's messages became more desperate, more pleading, but I didn't read a single one. I couldn't. Every time I saw her name on the screen, my stomach twisted with that familiar, bitter feeling. I was done, but it wasn't as simple as just leaving. No, it was far messier than that. It was like being stuck in a room where the walls were closing in, and no matter how hard you tried to escape, you were trapped. The first night in my own apartment was unsettling. I couldn't get used to the silence. In the house we shared, the noise of everyday life, the laughter, the occasional argument, the sound of Chloe moving around, had been comforting in its own way. Now, with the emptiness of the place around me, every corner felt foreign. My mind raced constantly, looping through thoughts of Chloe and Ben, of everything that had been said, of the lies that seemed so obvious now. I spent hours walking the city, trying to drown out the noise in my head, but it didn't help. I kept thinking back to the man she was with. Ben. I'd never heard of him before. He wasn't someone in her circle, not someone she'd mentioned in passing. And that made everything worse. It was like she had been living a secret life right under my nose, and I hadn't even known. On the third day, I caved. I didn't know why, but I picked up my phone and opened her messages. There were dozens of them. Please talk to me. I don't know what I did, but I need you to forgive me. I'm sorry, Artie. I'll do anything to make this right. But I couldn't get myself to respond. Not yet. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about everything else. The trust, the foundation of our relationship, the promise that she had broken without a second thought. And then, in the midst of all her messages, I found one that sent a chill down my spine. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but the message itself was simple. You're making a mistake. Let me explain, or you'll regret it. My hand trembled as I stared at the words. I didn't know who this was, but my gut told me it wasn't someone who had Chloe's best interests at heart. I hesitated for a moment, then deleted the message without responding. It wasn't worth my time. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was only scratching the surface of something much bigger than I had realized. I didn't hear from Chloe for the rest of the day, and when I went to bed that night, I thought I could finally get some peace. But sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The same face that had once been filled with warmth and love, now twisted with guilt and shame. I could still hear her voice, asking me to forgive her, begging me to take her back. But deep down, I knew that if I did, nothing would ever be the same. I could never look at her the way I once had. And that terrified me more than anything. The following day, I decided to take action. I couldn't keep drifting in this limbo. I had to make a decision. I needed closure, or I would never be able to move on. I texted Chloe to meet me at a coffee shop, a neutral place where we could talk without the weight of the house, without the memories. When I arrived, Chloe was already sitting at a table, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were red, and she looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. She stood up when she saw me, her lips trembling as she opened her mouth to speak. Artie, I know you hate me right now, she started, her voice weak. But please, just let me explain. I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. I needed to be strong, to stand firm. Explain? I asked, my voice cold. What's left to explain, Chloe? You've already shown me who you really are. She flinched as if I had slapped her. But I wasn't going to apologize for it. Not anymore. I never wanted to hurt you, she continued, her voice cracking. I didn't think it would go this far. I was just lost. I don't know what happened. Ben, he was just someone who listened. He made me feel seen when you didn't. I know that's no excuse, but it's the truth. I was wrong. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could feel the anger rise within me, but I fought it back. Anger wouldn't change anything. I needed answers. I needed to know how to end this once and for all. Was it just him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Or were there others, Chloe? Don't lie to me. I need to know the truth. Her face twisted, and I saw the fear in her eyes. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And that was all I needed to know. She was hiding something. Something bigger. Something I wasn't prepared for. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I couldn't sit there anymore. I couldn't listen to her. You've already made your choices, Chloe. You made them long before today. And now, I have to make mine. I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, I heard her call my name. Artie, please, don't walk away from me. I paused, my back to her, the weight of her words hanging in the air. But I didn't turn around. I'm already gone, Chloe. You just didn't realize it until now. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving everything behind. The life we had built, the woman I thought I loved, and whatever future we might have had. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do next. But one thing was clear, I couldn't go back. I couldn't unsee the things I had seen. And that was the hardest part of all. The days after the coffee shop meeting felt like I was walking through a fog. I wasn't sure if I was moving forward or if I was just floating, disconnected from reality. I went through the motions, waking up, going to work, coming home to an empty apartment. But nothing felt real. The life I had known had unraveled, and now I was left with pieces I didn't recognize. Chloe's calls and messages kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. But I ignored them all. I couldn't bring myself to even look at her name on my phone anymore. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way I had been. It was more like a numbness, a hollow feeling that gnawed at me. I had given everything to this woman, and now I had nothing left. But then, one day, as I sat at the small desk in my apartment, trying to focus on work, my phone buzzed. I hesitated. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something about it felt familiar. With a sigh, I answered it. Artie. The voice on the other end was male, but I couldn't place it. It's Ben. My heart skipped a beat. Ben. The man who had torn everything apart. The man who had somehow wedged himself into my life without me even knowing. My hand tightened around the phone as I sat up straight. What do you want? I couldn't hide the coldness in my voice. He paused, like he was gathering his thoughts. I need to talk to you. It's about Chloe. There's something you need to know. My chest tightened. I don't want to hear anything about her. Whatever you think you're going to say, I'm not interested. Just listen to me, Ben pushed. Please. I know what you're thinking, but it's not what you think. You need to hear this before it gets worse. I sat there for a long moment, considering hanging up. But curiosity, destructive, undeniable curiosity, kept me from doing it. Fine, I said, my voice tight. You've got 5 minutes. There was a long pause on the other end, and then Ben spoke again, this time more quietly. It wasn't just about her. It wasn't just some fling or mistake. There's more going on, Artie, and I think you need to know the truth. I felt the blood rush from my face. What are you talking about? What truth? Ben took a deep breath before continuing. Chloe, she wasn't just talking to me. There were other people involved. It's not just me. And I think she was using you, Artie. You were just a safe place for her to hide when things with us got complicated. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I wasn't sure what to believe. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Using me? That wasn't something I had even considered. Chloe had always seemed so genuine, so loving. But now, after everything that had happened, I had no idea who she really was. I clenched my teeth and spoke, my voice low and measured. You're lying. Why should I believe anything you say? Ben sighed heavily. I didn't want to get involved, Artie. But when she kept coming back to me, telling me how bad her marriage was, how she wasn't happy with you anymore, I couldn't stay silent. I know it's messed up, but I'm telling you the truth. She's been using you to cover up something darker. I couldn't take it anymore. My head was spinning. The room felt like it was closing in on me. What does that even mean? You expect me to believe that she's been lying to me all this time? That she never loved me? No, Ben said, his voice soft. I don't expect you to believe me. But you need to understand, Artie. I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to help you see the truth, even if it's hard to hear. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of his words sinking in. Part of me wanted to deny it, to push it all aside and pretend that it was just some twisted misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew he wasn't lying. There had been too many signs, too many things that didn't add up. I didn't know what to say. My mind was reeling, and I felt like I was losing control of everything. Ben spoke again, breaking through my thoughts. I'm not asking you to forgive Chloe, Artie, but I think you deserve to know what's been going on. You deserve to hear it from someone else, because you've been kept in the dark for too long. I sat there, my thoughts a blur. This wasn't just about Chloe anymore. It was about everything I had ever known. The foundation of my marriage, my trust, my identity. Everything had been shattered, and I had no idea how to piece it all back together. Why are you telling me this? I asked, finally finding my voice. Because you deserve the truth, Ben said quietly. And because, deep down, I know you're not going to get it from Chloe. She's too scared to face it. But you're not. You're stronger than this. I felt a surge of anger, but it was mixed with something else. Something cold. I don't need your pity, Ben, I said, my voice trembling with the weight of everything I was holding back. I need my life back. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then, Ben sighed again. I know. But you need to decide, Artie. Do you want the truth, or do you want to keep living in the dark? Because right now, you're in control of how this ends. I didn't say anything after that. I hung up the phone, the finality of his words echoing in my mind. He was right, I realized. I was in control. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some semblance of power again. But with that power came a terrible truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The truth was too much, too heavy. But I didn't have a choice anymore. The walls had been pulled down, and there was no going back. I had to face it, whether I wanted to or not. And that was the moment I realized my life was no longer about Chloe. It was about me. I didn't know where I was going from here, but I knew one thing. I had to take control of my own future, because if I didn't, I would lose everything. And I wasn't ready to lose anymore. The next few days were a blur. I could barely think straight, let alone focus on anything other than the mess my life had become. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chloe's face, the same face I had once loved, the face I thought I knew inside and out, now distorted by lies. I could still hear her voice, pleading with me, asking for forgiveness. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that forgiveness didn't mean anything anymore. What was there to forgive? She hadn't just lied to me. She had kept me in the dark, kept me as a fool in a marriage that wasn't real. But I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't pretend everything was fine and that I could pick up where we left off. The truth was too ugly, too raw. And what Ben had told me, what he had exposed, had ripped the veil off of the life I thought I had. It was a Saturday evening when I decided to confront Chloe once again. Something about the silence between us, about the unsaid words that had been building up, had to be addressed. I couldn't live like this, in limbo, any longer. I needed to know the whole truth. I needed to look her in the eye and hear it from her, not from Ben, not from some stranger. Chloe had to admit everything. I texted her that morning, "We need to talk. Meet me at the park in an hour." She replied almost immediately, "Please, Artie, can't we just talk at home? I promise I'll explain everything." I knew what she was trying to do. She wanted to avoid the confrontation. She wanted to control the situation in her way, on her terms. But I couldn't give her that. Not this time. So, I sent one final message. "No? You'll meet me at the park. We'll talk, but it's going to be on my terms now." I watched the little dots appear on her side of the screen, but she didn't reply. I didn't need a reply. I knew she would show up. She had no choice. She had to face the consequences of what she'd done. When I arrived at the park, I found a bench by the lake. The evening air was crisp, the sky painted in deep shades of purple and orange. It was the kind of evening that should have been peaceful, but instead, it felt heavy, like the weight of everything that had been left unsaid was hanging in the air. I could hear the rustling of the leaves in the trees, the sound of distant voices, but none of it mattered. All I could hear was the beating of my own heart, my thoughts spiraling in endless circles. I didn't have to wait long. Chloe arrived, walking slowly toward me, her face pale, eyes red-rimmed. She stopped a few feet away, her hands twisting together nervously. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. I watched her, wondering how someone who had once been the center of my world could seem so distant, so foreign now. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, stopping her. "I don't want to hear it," I said, my voice steady, colder than I'd meant it to be. "I need the truth. All of it. No more lies, No more excuses. Tell me everything. And don't hold anything back. She hesitated, her eyes darting around like she was searching for the right words, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Fear of losing me, yes, but fear of facing the consequences of her own actions too. Artie, please, she began, her voice trembling. I know I've hurt you. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. I just got caught up in something I didn't know how to get out of. I took a deep breath. The anger inside me was building, but I forced myself to stay calm. Caught up in something. I repeated, narrowing my eyes. Chloe, you weren't caught up in anything. You made a choice. You made a choice to lie to me. You made a choice to betray me. So, stop with the excuses. I want the truth, and I want it now. Her face crumpled, and she finally broke. She took a step forward, her voice barely a whisper. I was seeing Ben for months, Artie. It started as a friendship, I swear. Just someone to talk to when things weren't great between us. But then it became more. And I hated myself for it. I never meant for you to find out like this. I was trying to keep it all a secret, trying to keep my two lives separate. But it got out of control. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Months. I had been living in a house with her, sharing a bed with her, while she was seeing someone else. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream, to shout, to demand more answers. But I stayed silent, letting the weight of her confession settle over us like a suffocating blanket. I didn't know what to do, she continued, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know how to get out of it. Ben made me feel like I mattered, like I was more than just your wife, more than just someone who wasn't good enough for you anymore. I know that sounds awful, but that's the truth. I thought I could fix it on my own, that maybe if I just kept going, things would get better. But they didn't. And now look where we are. I've lost everything. I didn't know how to respond to that. The woman who had once been my partner, my best friend, the person I trusted more than anyone else, was standing before me, completely shattered. She had broken everything, and now there was nothing left. You didn't lose everything, Chloe, I said quietly, my voice raw. You threw it away. You destroyed everything we had, and I don't think there's any coming back from that. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Chloe didn't speak. She just stood there, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel anger toward her. I didn't feel hatred. I felt nothing. Empty. Like the person I had been was no longer here, lost in the wreckage of my marriage. Finally, I turned away from her. There was nothing else to say. I didn't need her apology anymore. I didn't need her to promise things would get better. I needed to move on. I needed to take back my life, because if I stayed any longer, I would be drowning in her lies. I'm leaving, Chloe, I said, my voice steady but broken. And this time, I'm not coming back. I didn't wait for her to respond. I just walked away. And this time, it wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of a chapter in my life, one I never thought I'd have to close. But I knew I had to, because if I didn't, I would lose myself too. And I wasn't about to lose anymore. I didn't realize how much weight I had been carrying until the moment I walked away from Chloe. The feeling wasn't relief, exactly. It wasn't a sense of freedom like I had thought it would be. It was more like being in a fog that had suddenly cleared, exposing everything I had been too afraid to see, everything I had been ignoring. I walked for hours after I left the park. It wasn't a conscious decision, really. I just kept moving, as if I were trying to outrun the pain, outrun the memory of her. Every step felt like a small victory, like I was taking back control, one step at a time. The apartment felt colder that night, more empty than before. The silence was louder now, unbearable even. I thought about what she had said, about her confession, about how everything had gotten out of control. I could still hear her voice, the tremble in her words, but none of it mattered anymore. I couldn't keep playing the part of the husband who was oblivious to the truth. I had seen too much now. And the hardest part? I couldn't even feel anger anymore. For days, I just existed. I went through my routine, trying to keep myself distracted, but nothing worked. The loneliness was overwhelming. I had always been a people person, someone who thrived on connection and relationships, but now it felt like everything was hollow. Every phone call, every text, even talking to my friends, it all felt empty. But there was a moment, a small one, when I realized I needed to stop wallowing in self-pity. I needed to find something to focus on, something that was mine, something to keep me from drowning in all the questions and the guilt that seemed to follow me everywhere. I needed to rebuild. That night, I sat down at my desk, determined to start fresh. I grabbed a piece of paper and a pen, as if the simple act of writing could somehow change the direction of my life. I wrote one word: move. That was it. The word didn't mean anything specific, but it meant something to me. It meant action. It meant I wasn't going to sit in this apartment, in this sadness, any longer. I was going to make a change, whatever it took. The first step was practical. I started looking for a new place to live. I needed space, and not just metaphorically. I needed a place where I could breathe without the weight of Chloe's presence haunting me. I needed to let go of the life I had built with her, and it started with leaving this apartment behind. I found a small studio in a part of town I hadn't even considered before, a place that was far from the life we had shared. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was a fresh start, even if it was just a tiny step in the right direction. The second step was more difficult. I had to start dealing with the feelings that I had buried for so long. I spent the next few weeks digging into what had gone wrong. I knew I wasn't perfect. I knew I had my flaws, my own faults in the relationship. But what hurt the most was how Chloe had taken everything I gave her and used it to create a lie. And not just once, but repeatedly. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. How could I have been so blind? But then I stopped. I stopped beating myself up. I couldn't change the past, and I wasn't going to waste any more time regretting it. I needed to forgive myself, not for Chloe's actions, but for my own. For staying in the relationship when I had felt something was wrong, when I had ignored the red flags. It wasn't easy, but slowly, I started to let go of the anger that had consumed me. And then one morning, I woke up with a thought that shocked me. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, I thought about moving on, for real. Not just physically, but emotionally. I thought about the possibility of finding love again, of letting someone new in. The thought made me anxious, but it also gave me a spark of hope. It wasn't going to happen overnight. I knew that. But the idea that I could be happy again, that there was something beyond the devastation of my past, was a thought I hadn't let myself entertain until now. A week later, I was unpacking boxes in my new place when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Chloe. "I miss you so much. Can we talk? Please. I need you." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, weighing the decision in my head. She had been the center of my world for so long, but now, I wasn't sure who she was anymore, or who I was in relation to her. She had broken me, twisted everything I thought I knew. I knew I had to make a decision. I could answer her, fall back into the old patterns, and let the past drag me back. Or I could do what I had been doing, moving forward. I looked out the window at the city skyline, the sunlight filtering through the blinds. It was a new day, a new life. I put the phone down, and for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. I didn't need her to complete me. I didn't need her to apologize. I needed to take control of my own life again, to decide what my future would look like. I wasn't going to be defined by my past anymore. I wasn't going to be defined by the woman who had broken my heart. I was going to be defined by the man I was becoming. And that man was stronger, wiser, and ready to move on. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew this. I had taken the first step, and that was all that mattered. The days that followed felt like a gentle breeze after a storm. There was a quiet sense of peace in the chaos I had been through, a stillness that allowed me to breathe again. It wasn't easy, but each day I woke up with a little more clarity, a little more strength. I had learned the hardest lesson of my life, the truth about love, betrayal, and most importantly, about myself. I threw myself into the new apartment, making it my own. The blank walls that once seemed so empty now felt full of possibility. I spent weekends making small changes, buying little things that made it feel more like a home. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every corner of that space felt like a new beginning. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about my own future. I had been so focused on Chloe, on what was happening between us, that I had forgotten about the person I used to be, the person I was still capable of becoming. It wasn't about filling the void she left behind. It was about rediscovering who I was without her. One night, a few months later, I was at a bar with a couple of friends. We were celebrating nothing in particular, just enjoying the night. I wasn't thinking about relationships or the past. I was just living in the moment. And that's when I met her. Her name was Emma. She was sitting at the bar, her laugh filling the space with warmth. There was something about her that caught my attention. She wasn't perfect, and I wasn't looking for perfection. But there was something about her that felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain, like she was someone I was supposed to meet, someone who could understand what I had been through without needing to say a word. We talked for hours. The conversation flowed easily, and I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing, for the first time in what felt like forever. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't feel the need to tell her about it. We were just two people, sharing an evening, no expectations, no baggage. By the end of the night, I realized something. I wasn't ready for a relationship, not in the way I had been with Chloe, but I was open to it. I was ready to let someone in, but on my terms, at my pace. I wasn't looking for validation anymore. I was looking for connection, something real, something honest. As we said our goodbyes, Emma gave me a smile that made my heart skip. "I'd love to see you again," she said. And I realized, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of what could come next. I wasn't afraid of opening up again. In the months that followed, I took my time. I didn't rush things with Emma, but we built something slowly, something real. I wasn't trying to replace what I had with Chloe. What I had with Emma was something entirely different, something grounded in who I was now, not who I used to be. And it felt good. It felt like the right thing. I never reached out to Chloe again after that night in the park. She tried, of course. There were more texts, more apologies, more desperate attempts to explain. But I knew the truth now. Chloe was part of my past. She had been a chapter one needed to close, and that's exactly what I did. I had nothing left to say to her. In time, I learned to forgive. Not because she asked for it, but because I needed to let go of the bitterness. I wasn't going to let her actions control my future. I wasn't going to let her take any more of my time, my energy, or my heart. As the years passed, I found myself surrounded by new people, new experiences, and new opportunities. I built a life that was mine, not defined by anyone else's choices, not held hostage by someone's betrayal. And slowly, I came to realize something important. Life had a funny way of working out. The road ahead wasn't always clear, but it was mine to walk, step by step. The past would always be there, but it no longer had the power to dictate who I was or where I was going. I had taken the pain, the lessons, and the heartbreak, and I had turned it into strength. I wasn't the man I used to be, and thank God for that. And as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment one evening, watching the sun set over the horizon, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I was no longer the man who had been broken. I was the man who had rebuilt himself from the ground up. And the best part? I was finally living for myself, with no one else's story but my own. And it felt damn good.